Okay, dear friends, we're in chapter 7. The action is heating up. And as the expression says, the greater they are, the harder they fall. We have just a quick recap. Esther has been commanded by Mordechai to reveal her origins and save the Jewish people. She accepted this mission, although she was very reluctant for self-preservation reasons. But she bought into it. She had Mordechai tell every single person to fast for her for 3 days. No food, no water. She included herself. That fast coincided with Pesach. There was no Pesach, there no Seder. It was Mavatel. It was totally nullified in order to have enough merit to be successful in meeting Achashverosh to get rid of the evil decree. She goes in and she invites Achashverosh and Haman to a Suda. We try to figure out what was her plan. Why did she invite Haman? Actually, the Gemara gives 12 reasons why she invited Haman to the Suda. We mentioned a few of them, but the biggest one, if you remember correctly, was she wanted to give Achashverosh the impression, and she was hinting at it, that her and Haman were in collusions, and maybe more, trying to take over her kingdom, his kingdom, right? So that obviously added and fed into the paranoia of Achashverosh. So Haman, from Haman's perspective, he gets invited to this Su'udah, this feast, because Achashverosh allows Esther to come in, goes to the feast, and when he says, "What do you want?" she says, "Come to another feast that I'm making." And that's exactly where we open up. We're on chapter 7. V'yavo Hamelech v'Haman. So Achashverosh and Haman come, lishtot in Esther Malka, to eat with Esther Malka. How is she referred to over here? Esther Hamalka. What does Esther Malka mean? What? Yeah, what does it imply? Esther, who happens to be the queen, meaning that she knew her place. She played her place. She realized that what she's about to ask was a very big thing. And if she is Hamalka Esther, or just like Hamalka Vashti, it's not going to work out good. So she is acting very politically savvy and careful. At the Suda, which remember Haman was dragged to by the troops of Achashverosh while he was sitting with his family, and his family, remember, said, "Don't hang Mordechai on the gallows. It's going to come back and get you," which it does actually in spades. Vayom HaMelech, and the king says to Esther, Gam Bayom HaSheni, on the second day, because the day before was the first feast. This is day 2. This is feast number 2. V'mishteyayim, ma she'elotech, what is your she'elah? And ma bekashatech. And what is your request? This is actually the question he asked before. What is your she'elah? She'elah, what is your request? And bakasha. What is the difference between a she'elah and a bakasha? What is the difference between a she'elah and a bakasha? Yeah.
She'elah is a question.
Okay.
And bakasha is a request.
But we know what she's going to do. She's going to turn around to Achashverosh and say, "Save my people." But what's Achashverosh asking her? There's obviously 2 types of request. So a she'elah is a question. What is your personal request for yourself? He says to her, if what you need is personal to you, what is it? What do you, Esther, need? What is your personal request? I'm going to give it to you. And that's why it says, Mashalatech Esther, v'tinaten lach, I'll give it to you. It's a personal request, something you need personally. Uma bekashatech, and what's your bakasha? which is your request for someone else. For someone else. He's like, I'll even give you that. That's how the Vilna Gaon understands it. A she'elah is a personal request. A bakasha is a request for other person or other people. Says Achashverosh, I will give you either. By the way, what's going through Haman's mind right now? What's going through Haman's mind? He's been to the first Suda. He's been to the second. He's rich. He's powerful. He's built the gallows to hang Mordechai. What's in his mind, you think? That's going to be relevant. Because whatever's in his mind is what Esther wants to actually keep in his mind. What's he thinking? Is he happy? Is he sad? Is he confident? Is he... He's extremely confident. And he must be thinking, why is she inviting me to these, not just me, her, and Achashverosh? It must be she needs me for what I'm about to, whatever she's about to ask Achashverosh for, right? It can't just be money. Maybe it's my mind, but whatever it is, this is great for me. Whatever the she'elah bakasha is, obviously, she needs my input. So from his perspective, he feels he's not only invited, but he's really important and he is needed. So from his perspective, he's doing amazingly. Of course, this is Esther, says the Gemara, making him feel good, because the bigger you are, the harder you fall. Plus, she's freaking out, says the Gemara, all the Jewish people who think these very important private meetings are with the greatest Jew hater that they had heard a rumor was going to kill them all, because it wasn't definite yet. Right? It was only Shushan Apira, and Shushan was Navocha. They'd heard this rumor get out from all the officers around the world that they were going to get killed, but it wasn't clear at this point to them. So they were told to fast, but it was based upon hearsay. They were trusting. And now they're thinking, wow, Haman is now being invited to the most important Suda. This, says the Gemara, was Esther's way of keeping them all on their toes, praying to Hashem for their success. Here comes the big reveal. It happens right now. Oh, by the way, Ad Chatzia Malchut, the test. What was Chatzia Malchut? I'll give you everything, but not Yerushalayim and the rebuilding of the temple. That you're not going to get. You're not doing that for anybody else. Why? That would even come to his mind. Why that's where the Gemara understands that statement is difficult to know. It's hard to know Achashverosh's reasoning, but that was something he was very, very careful about, without even knowing that she was Jewish. She answers, Esther Malka. She speaks to him as Esther, who was given the position of queen. She's not stepping out of her boundaries. She knows that's what Vashti did, and it didn't work out well. V'tome Esther ima tzaddikim b'einecha. Hamelach v'yamar hamelach tov, if it's good, please give me nafshi b'shelati, save me, that's my she'elah, va'ami, and my people, b'kashati. So you see the bakasha is related to the nation. And the she'elah is for her own life. So she was basically telling him, what? She's Jewish. Now you know who I am. He's finally got his answer. And she gives a little historical background. We were sold out as slaves when the temple was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar. You remember him, Achashverosh? He put us out, and it's not going to be worth you to kill all these people. Remember, the Jewish people are not mentioned by name over here, because at the end of the story, it would have been embarrassing for Achashverosh had that been written explicitly. So it's like an anonymous nation, but we know who Esther is, and we know where people are, so we know it's the Jewish people. Who is this person who wants to destroy and kill everyone? Who is this person? Everything seems to be asked in like doubles. Who? Hashem will do such a terrible thing. But Tomer Esther, Ish Tsar v'oyev, Haman hara hazeh. What does hazeh mean? mean?
This one.
Why this? Just say Haman. What does zeh mean? Whenever you see the word zeh, wherever it appears in the Torah, it always means somebody is doing something. Anyone know what it means? We do it at the Pesach Seder, we're going to do it. We're going to say zeh.
When you're pointing to something physical?
Exactly. You're pointing to something. So that means she actually picked up her finger and pointed at Haman. Actually, the Gemara says that she was such an honest person, she actually pointed at Achashverosh and an angel came and moved her finger to Haman. Because he was the one who made the decree. He's the one who made it happen. So she points at him and then the finger went to Haman. That means she points him out. And what does Haman do? He's like, what? Like in a flash, Keharif eye, in the blink of an eye, he is now on the most wanted FBI list. Numero uno. He's up there with, all these drug dealers, Wow. The Haman nivat. He is totally terrified. He realized the whole thing was a trap that she's been setting up. The whole house of cards comes crashing down. V'hamelech come. He gets up from his anger, and he goes out to his garden. Tries to calm himself because he is really angry. But he's got to take out a brazen when I think about how I'm going to react, because if I make the wrong decision, taking down such a politically savvy, but who knows? Maybe this Haman guy has a whole army, right? Who knows what he's got? He's got to think about it. So he goes out to his gina bitan, to his garden. So Haman takes the opportunity to get up and to plead for his nefesh. Esther from Esther. He's going to plead for his life. Hamalka. Kira ki chalta elava ramye Amalek. He sees that he's in big trouble with the king. As he does it, Hamelech shav Megillah to be just as the king returns from the garden to the Mishteh Yayin, Haman nofel, falls alamita onto the bed of Esther. Now the bed, not literally mean the bed she sleeps in, right? They used to actually have their meals reclining on a bed. That was the way meals were done. You basically recline on a couch thing, on the floor, on some cushions. That's how we eat. So as he walks in, he sees that he's nofel. By the way, is it Haman nofel? What should it say? Do you know what the grammar should be? Nafal. But it says nofel. What does nofel mean? Is falling. This is just a continuation of a falling that Haman was going through from the beginning of this whole story when he was mamuchan. Remember that whole jig? Right? This is all news according to them. Okay? Haman, Achashverosh sees this, a yomer, and he says, Hagam nechos Amalek. Not only do you want my power and my majesty, right? Because that's the assumption, but even my life, it's a malcheni babayit, right? As soon as he says it, by the way, they say that he didn't say anything, by the way. Every other conversation that the king had, it went through a second person. Here, he's speaking directly. So now he's speaking directly. Haman knows he's in big trouble. Ufnei Hamaman chafu, the cover his face. Yomer Chavona, who's an interesting character, who is actually seen as switching both ways. 1 minute he's your friend, next minute he's against you. Echad min hasarisim lefnei Amalek, v'gam hinei ha'etz asher asa Haman leMordechai shediber tov el Amalek omed b'bayit Haman govach b'shem Haman yiveh Amalek talu alav. Aha. By the way, he says, I'm not just going to kill you. You know you built those big gallows you wanted to hang Mordechai on? 50 amot high, what is it, 3,500 feet? You are going to be hanged on that. We learn from here another example of midah keneged midah. This whole story is a measure for measure. Whatever they want to do to us, they do to them. Yeah, the Jewish people pretended to worship. They pretended to bow down. Hashem pretends to kill them. Yep, it's midah keneged midah. Here's another example of it. And now what Mordechai, I'm not even drunk, I'm ready to make a mistake. What Haman wanted to do to Mordechai, right, is now going to be done to Haman. V'yitlu et Haman ha'le'etz. So Haman is now killed on the tree, the eitz, which he actually fixed for Mordechai. V'chamat hamelech shachacha. He is shocheach. He had calmed down from the anger. The anger, actually, shachach is almost like a plural anger. The anger over Haman, the anger of not knowing where Esther was from, and everything else. He had calmed down. Now that should be the end of the story, right? Haman's dead. He's the cause of this problem, but there's one big problem still left, which is he sent a letter that in Adar, which is less than a year away, right? Because we're in mid-Nisan right now, or near the end of Nisan at this point, that all the Jews can be killed, and you're not going to get punished for doing it, and whatever you get to keep. Right? Ushlalam lavos. All of their loot you can keep for yourself. That's still out there. So what are they going to do? What are Mordechai and Esther going to do? This becomes really difficult. They're going to have to think up a very clever plan.
He sent this after Haman died? Or?
Haman's dead. It says over here. V'yitlu et Haman ha'leitz. Verse 10. Chapter 8 tells us that.
Didn't they also hang his kids? Didn't they hang Haman's kids too?
Coming.
Oh,
Bayomahu Natan Amalek Achashverosh Esther Malka et Beit Haman. So they're turning around and be like, okay, let's get that back, that decree. But he can't do that. Achashverosh cannot reverse the decree. He cannot reverse it. He can't out send letters saying, sorry, didn't mean that. Why not? Why can he not do that? Why can Achashverosh not reverse the decree?
it makes him look dumb.
Make him look weak, fickle, yeah, open to manipulation. If he reverses the decree, what's going to happen is every decree is going to get reversed, or they think it will, and people won't do anything anymore. If we know every time, like your mother says to you, right, you're in big trouble, tonight you're going to be punished, and then you're not punished for the crime, you're going to do it again, because you know your mother's weak, she's not going to punish you. Yeah, same thing over here. So what does Achashverosh do? He says, fine, no problem. He says, you know what? I'm going to give you Haman's house. Everyone's going to know that because it was a big house, right? And Mordechai comes in front of the king because he owes him this favor. Remember from the whole Big Seven Teresh assassination debacle. Remember that ring he gave Haman to do whatever he wants with? The signet ring that can sign any decree? Now Mordechai's got it. So now she gets Haman's house. He gets Haman's ring. What's he doing over here? He's saying, this decree that came from Haman, listen to these two people. I can't reverse the decree, but I can show everyone that you are Jewish, which everyone knows. And, that's public information now, and you have control over their home. No one's going to want to kill you. No one's going to want to kill you. Okay? So that was Achashverosh's compromise. What is Esther and Mordechai going to say to that? What is Esther and Mordechai going to say to that compromise? Are they happy with that? No. Like, that's not enough. What, that's it? I get the house, he gets the ring, and people are going to figure out, oh, don't hurt the Jewish people, right? When that date comes around. So what does Esther do? She's got to pray some more. By the way, this was even more than the other previous requests. Because now, Haman's dead, but the decree is much bigger, at this point, it's bigger than Haman. Look at verse 3, V'tosef Esther. Esther again, V'tadaber lefnei HaMelech, V'tipol lefnei raglav. She goes down, V'tavkei, and she cries and pleads with him, La'avir, to remove et rat Haman HaGagi, to remove this Amalekite decree that Machsharton, what he wanted to do, Asher Chashav al Yehudim, to the entire Jewish people. Now they refer to as Yehudim, right? Secret sound. So she's pleading with him to save her people. So the Yoshua Melech Esther Sharvit, as he puts out his thing, his scepter to say, I hear you. And Esther gets up to stand in front of the king. Vatome im al melech tov. Please, do me a favor. And if you just let me have this one final request, everything, and I look good to you, let it be written. So here's the compromise. He put in a bid, right? I'll give you the house, I'll give you the ring, and everything. And she's like, no, let's do this. I understand you can't reverse the decree, but how about this for a compromise? She says, Mordechai and her say, let's send out another decree in addition. So we're not going to get rid of the first one. We're going to get a second decree sent out, okay? Which is not a reversal of the first, but is an additional decree. And what's that going to say? V'yikatev la'shivet sfarim machshavat Haman, right? Okay. Let it be sent out that. No. Now she says reverse the decree. I'm sorry. She says let decree go out that reverse the decree. All right, to not wipe out my people. And then in verse 7, Vayom Amalek Achashverosh Esther Malka, all of Mordechai Yehudi knows they're working together. He says, I gave you the house, and I've killed him. That should be enough. He says, so no. So this is actually Achashverosh's idea. He says, I'll tell you what you can do. Write a note that's going to go out as a royal decree in verse 8. So I got the order wrong. He says that it's going to be written and signed that on the Chodesh HaShlishi, Chodesh Sivan, let it be sent out that whoever receives this decree should know that the Jewish people are allowed to defend themselves against, I'm jumping a bit, but defend themselves against any attacks that they get, and they won't get into trouble for protecting themselves against anyone who hurts them. Okay? That's my counter officer Achashverosh. Mordechai and Esther realize that's the best way to do it. So it was sent out that on the day that was chosen in Adar, so the first decree is still there. But the second decree is saying that the Jewish people are allowed to defend themselves. I will not get into trouble for doing that. Right? They're entitled to. He says, first of all, that's going to send a message that people are going to get it. I can't reverse the first one, but at least let the Jewish people protect themselves when it happens. They buy into it, and they send out the fastest camels and horses to spread this as quickly as possible to every single region as a message to the Amalekites out there who are going to attack them anyway. And there are going to be pockets of people who do try to attack them, right? Not as many as you would expect, but many don't. And it's a message to the Jewish people, don't worry, Esther's in the house, Haman is dead, Mordechai is powerful, you can protect yourself, don't worry. And finally, verse 15, Mordechai goes out wearing royal clothing, right? Here we see clothing again. He's gone from sackcloth and ashes to royal clothing, back to sackcloth and ashes, back to royal clothing. This beautiful clothing. And the people in Shushan, meaning the Jewish people in Shushan, were extremely happy, realizing that Mordechai had been elevated, the decree had not been reversed, but had been superseded by another decree, which they felt was better. And then the Jewish people celebrated. But there's a very specific joy that they felt. And here we see a very famous understanding of the next four words. La Yehudim hayata. For the Jewish people there was. Verse 16, chapter 9. Ora. There was Or. There was Ora. There was Simcha. There was happiness. There was Sason. Sound familiar these words to you? There was Sason. And the Yikar. What are these 4 types of joy? What exactly is this? The Jewish people feel confident now. They know Mordechai is there. They know Hashem has heard the tefillot. Haman is dead. The story has got out. And to the Jewish people there was Ora Simchas Sason Vikar. We say these words during Havdalah. Okay. Let's bank that for a second. What are these 4 things? So on the surface, it seems to be saying there was light, there was happiness, there was joy, and there was honor. Wow, what does it even mean? The Gemara makes a big deal out of these 4 words and says, actually, these are code words. These are code words for 4 things that they actually had a lot of trouble with and maybe weren't allowed to do at all, then now returned. What exactly are these 4 things? Anybody? So, Ora, Torah. To the Jewish people, there was Torah. Ora is a code word for Torah. Ora, Torah. The light of Torah. Now the Jewish people are Torah. Okay, well, they had a Torah before, but now some have Torah. What is the Simcha? What does Simcha usually represent? In relation to what is the word Simcha mentioned the most in the Torah? Which mitzvah? V'samachta holidays, Chagecha, V'itach Samech, including Shabbat actually. So now they had Chagim, they had Jewish holidays and Shabbat. Suddenly, they got Jewish holidays and Shabbat? I mean, really? Okay.
So, but
You have to understand that, but okay.
didn't we mention before Pesach?
Very good. They seem to have holidays up to now.
Yeah.
Then what happened? Right? What, I mean, they didn't have a Torah, they didn't have Jewish holidays or Shabbat? Okay. Let's just finish off the list. What is Sason? Sason is mentioned in the Pasuk in relation to Brit Milah. Sason, when it comes to Brit Milah, now they can do Brit Milah, and Vikar refers to, and is mentioned in Pesukim referring to Tefillin, the mitzvah of Tefillin. What is going on over here? What is the Gemara telling us? And why was this mentioned in the Megillah? So on the surface, it would seem as though, which is true, it became, this is Pshat. Pshat is, there's no Pshat, because Pshat is, they had Ora Simcha Sason Vikar. They were celebrating in different ways. So one drush, one understanding is that these things became very, very difficult. Decrees went out. It was hard to keep Torah. It was hard to keep Chagim and Shabbat. They were able to do it, but you were doing it in private. There was a lot of anti-Semitism. People were like, we're going to get you, you're going to get killed soon, right? It was a very, very difficult time, right? Brit Milah was forbidden, it had to be done privately or secretly, and Tefillin, right? All these are signs that were weakened, and actually there was decrees that they were actually forbidden. So together with the physical threat from the Jewish people, there was also a spiritual threat. And you'll notice that when people try to kill the Jewish people, they want to do it by physically killing us, or by spiritually taking away our mitzvot. Mitzvot that actually keep us going as a people. Okay? So those are the 4 things. And now they literally had light. They could go out and they could rejoice that they were able to do these mitzvot. That's one interpretation. There is a much more important and different interpretation. And this question and answer is going to reveal to us why, out of all the things that happened in our history, This is one of the biggest salvations the Jewish people have ever had, that we still celebrate it now, and will celebrate it up to and past the arrival of Mashiach. I'll explain. The Maral and others say something fascinating. They're like, the Jewish people always had a Torah. They always had Shabbat. They always had Brit Milah, and they always had Tefillin. So what does that mean? They now had Ora, Simcha, Sason, Vikam. What does that mean? It means their relationship to these mitzvot and all the others, but these one particularly, changed dramatically. Up to this point, they had done them in a certain way, with a certain feeling and a certain attitude, but the Megillah is telling us that from this point on, they were done completely differently. How? It tells you. Now when they learned Torah, it gave them light. When they kept Shabbat, now they had real simcha. When they did Brit Milah, there was a level of sason that never existed before. Even before this whole Purim thing happened. And Tefillin was a whole different experience. Why? How did they used to keep these holidays before the Purim story that things changed? What was the difference? What was the difference? And why would the Purim story, the events of Purim, change it all? The salvation of Purim. At this point it changed, not before. So the answer goes like this. It goes like this. You see, up to this point, from Har Sinai and onwards, the Jewish people related to mitzvot through yira, through fear. Their entire connection to all the mitzvot was through fear, as we'll see in a second. And I'll prove it to you from the verses themselves. However, from this point on, they realize there's another way to connect to God and the Torah and all the mitzvot, and that is ahava, through love. That means this wasn't just an event that happened to the Jewish people. This was a complete revolutionary event that changed our entire perception of who we are, what the Torah is. Up to now, there was always yira. From Har Sinai onwards, there was always a level of yira that existed among the Jewish people. They couldn't ever really relax and have a full loving relationship with Hashem. However, after this point, when this miracle happened, it was so big and so impactful that it changed everything. Sometimes one event can change your entire perception of things. Maybe in your personal life, but we talk about, well, that was before your time, most of you, pre 9/11, post 9/11, or before the Holocaust and after the Holocaust. The Holocaust was an event, but it was that's a negative example, but it was so bad and so that you can't compare life before and after. And there's positive. There's before the state of Israel's, created and after. It just, that one event, even if you weren't personally involved, it changes us as a nation so much that you can talk about before and after that event. This is the prime example. There's before Purim and after Purim. After Purim is so different to what it was before that we were never the same people ever again. And the Jewish people have not been the same ever since. Although it's the same Torah, we're different people. Okay. And this switch around you actually see in verse 9, in chapter 9. It says, so fine, 12th of Chodesh Adar, Shoshasar Yom, Higir Melech, this whole thing went out. V'nahafoch. Everything which wanted to happen, v'nahafochu. It all turned around. We said, if you remember previous class, the astrological symbol of Adar are the fish, Pisces, the two opposing fish. It's going one way, v'nahafochu, it changes direction. That's what happened to the Jewish people. 1 minute we're about to be killed, the next minute we're in the best place we've ever been, and we are a brand new nation. V'naf asher yishtu hayudim ema b'soneihem. Because all the Jewish people now felt confident, they felt good, they felt a faith in God they never experienced before. And they gathered together in all the cities and the Medinos and their territories, and all the bad that wanted to happen to them, which had been with them for all this time. Why? So now all these people who wanted to kill couldn't, because the fear of pachad of Mordechai was on them. That means they understood the repercussions of attacking the Jewish people on such a great time. Ki gadol Mordechai beit HaMelech. And they heard, everyone heard how important Mordechai was, so that aspect did work. They understood that Mordechai was important, he was powerful, he's a leader, and hurting his people would end up not being good on them. But still, it says in verse 5, on that day, they were attacked, and they defended themselves, because Ahasuerus said they could. So there was an attack on that day. There was an attack. Yeah. And the people in Shushan around the world, wherever they were attacked. They were to survive. Over Shushan Habira, and in the central city of Shushan Habira, the Jewish people killed 500-ish. That means 500 people who were in the government, in positions of power. There were many more, but at least 500 came to attack them in Shushan Habira alone, and not a single Jew lost their lives. In self-defense, they attacked them, and remember, they never took a single penny from any of these people. What does that mean, never took a penny? Why is that important? Why is it implicated that they never took any of their stuff? Well, if you remember, the original war against Amalek, which Shaul did, he allowed the Jewish people to take the loot from the battle, the spoils of war. So they learned from that line. When it comes to Amalek, you can't leave anything. Everything's got to go. We can get no better. Other battles you can. You fight Egyptians, which they did when they left Mitzrayim. They took the spoils of war. You fight Canaan, but when it comes to Amalek, you can take absolutely nothing at all. So they didn't take anything from this battle. Yeah? They didn't take a single thing. And Haman had 10 sons. These were Amalekites. So she pleads in verse 9, chapter 13, Vatome Esther, im malach tov, if it's good for you, Yonaten gam machal Yehudim shishnav, do me a favor, please, take the 10 sons of Haman and hang them on the same tree that you killed Haman as well on.
Who said that?
Esther pleaded with Ahasuerus again to kill the 10 sons. These were important people who were very powerful. They needed its own request just to wipe out these 10 individuals of Haman and his wife Zeresh. Look what it says in verse 16. So the Jews in Shushan, also on the 14th. So there's actually two battles. You have a battle outside of Shushan Habira, it's on the 13th, and there's another battle on the 14th in Shushan Habira. Yeah? So it says, V'kali Yodim Asher b'Shushan Gam b'Yom Arba Asar lechodesh Adar. V'yargu b'Shushan 300 ish uviza uviza lo sholchot yadam. They didn't take any of their stuff. They didn't take all these Amalekites that came to kill them. They never took their stuff. And the other Jews who were elsewhere, they were able to stand up against them, and there were thousands, tens of thousands of people, and never took anything. Okay? So, look at verse 17. Now we have two dates, okay, corresponding to the two battles. Okay? We have the 13th and we have the 14th. There's two battles. We have the 13th.
This is Adar, right?
Outside, yeah, we're in Adar. Outside Shushan, Habira, and the 14th is inside Shushan. Why is the battle on different days? So I'm not really sure. It could be that Shushan Habira had a stronghold, had a moat. So, or maybe it took an extra day of battle to make it happen. But on both of them, they were successful. Okay? So outside, they fought on the 13th and they celebrated on the 14th. In Shushan Habira, they fought on the 14th and celebrated on the 15th. Sound familiar? Huh?
Can you repeat which dates were?
Yeah. Outside of Shushan, on the 13th, they fasted and fought. They fasted against. That's why we see one of the reasons for fasting Megillah Esther. This is one of the reasons. They fasted and fought on the 13th against defensive and then celebrated on the 14th. In Shushan Habira, they fasted and fought on the 14th and celebrated on the 15th. Okay? So outside Shushan Habira, 13th was fast and 14th was celebrate.
But why?
Because that's when the attacks happened. Seemingly, in Shushan Habira, maybe it took a day later, there's more armies, more troops, it took extra days for everyone to come out and do it. But the 14th they fasted and fought, right? And on the 15th, they celebrated.
So 13th and 14th, they fought. And the
14th and the 13th, and 15th they celebrated fast and war. Outside of Shushan. And here we do inside. Okay? So we actually have two separate dates that Purim is celebrated on. Here, look at verse 7, it's written. B'yom ha-13 l'chodesh Adar, on the 13th of Adar, Noach, ba'arba asa bo, v'asa yom mishteh b'simcha. V'yudim et b'shushan, nikala b'shlosh bo, v'arba asa yom. They fought for 2 days. V'noach b'chashemisa, and they rested on the 15th. V'asu atom mishteh, that became their Yom Mishteh V'Simcha. Al Kain, therefore says the Megillah, Hayudim ha'prazim v'yoshim ba'ari ha'prazot, osim et yom ha'basar yom v'chodesh adar simcha mishteh v'yom tov, v'shlach marot ish lo yehu. So now we have two different timings of Purim. People who live outside a walled city do the earlier date, and inside a walled city, like Shushan Habira, celebrate it a day later. There's a problem. And the problem is, the rabbis say, that it's embarrassing because the city of Jerusalem at this point was not walled. And that would be like a busha to poor Yerushalayim that had its walls destroyed. So they said, not for the times of this battle do you have to be a walled city, or after that. Anything that was a walled city, from the time of Yehoshua, when Joshua went into Israel for the first time, any walled city from that time, not from this time, but anyone who's in a walled city from that time, as not to embarrass Yerushalayim, which had been desecrated and destroyed and is about to be rebuilt, and the second temple is about to start being rebuilt again, is going to follow this. So if ever there is a walled city, okay, from the times of Yoshua, they're going to celebrate Purim like Shushan Abira a day later. It's like embarrassing to say Shushan Abira was walled, but Yerushalayim not walled. That's not nice to say about Yerushalayim. And therefore, that has become what we call Shushan Purim, which is any walled city, but walled now, not walled now. Walled from the Purim story, not walled then. Walled from the time that Yoshua went in. Any city that has a wall around it from the time of Yoshua, which is going to include Yerushalayim, is going to have and celebrate Purim a day later. Because the battle of Shushan Abira took 2 days. That's a walled city, but Yerushalayim wasn't walled. Yeah, but from the days of Yoshua it was, and therefore that became the custom among the Jewish people. And to this day, Shushan Purim is celebrated a day later in Yerushalayim. That's how we do it. And we know how. We send out Mishloach Manot, and in the following classes we'll look at how to fulfill that. Ishra Re'ehu Mishteh, and there's going to be eating, the Yom Tov. It becomes a happy, good day. And this was sent out to the people all over the world. Every Jew from then on was going to celebrate this holiday. L'kamalem liot osim et yom 14 l'chodesh Adar ve'et yom 15, whether the 14th or the 15th, b'chol shana v'shana, each and every year. And what are we celebrating? The Megillah is telling us, verse 9. They were saved, and Hashem turned around our potential yagon l'simcha, hurt to joy, me'evel. We went from mourning liyom tov, לעשות אותם ימי משתה ושמחה, ומשלוח מנות, ומתת לאביונים. We're going to give food portions to other people. We're going to give money and things. Actually, probably better to give food to Evyonim. Evyon is a low-level poor person. The Kibel Yudim, and you know what? You know what's really amazing? The Jewish people accepted this as a holiday. They created their own Chag. Mordechai and Esther started a campaign, and it started to work. The Kibel Yudim, the Jewish people accepted. Et asher achilu lasot ve'et asher katav Mordechai lehem. Everything that was written by Mordechai and sent out. Ki Haman ben Hamdatah gad yitzor Yodim chashav le'yodim la'abdam. He wanted to wipe them out, and he made a poor goral to wipe them out, and they survived. They survived the biggest threat against the entire Jewish people forever. And all of the plans that had happened, and he was Al Cain. Look at chapter 9, verse 26. These days are called Purim because of the poor, because of the lottery, and this Igeret, this letter that was sent out. And then it says, look at this very unusual verse. The Kimu, the Kiblu, verse 27. Write those words down. Those are two important. The Gemara makes a big deal out of these two words. Kimu v'kiblu. It's related to what we said already. What is kimu v'kiblu? Well, I mean, on the surface, they were makayem. They fulfilled mashikibel, that which they received, which seemingly means the mitzvah of Purim. The 4 mitzvah of Purim they took upon themselves to do every single year. The Gemara says even more than that. They were makayem, that which they were mekabel, that which they accepted already. They finally were able to mekayem for the first time that which they received. What's that? That is the entire Torah was accepted like new. That means what started at Har Sinai had continued and had come to its full conclusion at the Purim story. I mean, the giving of the Torah, or the acceptance of the Torah, was twice. We accepted the Torah at Har Sinai, and then we re-accepted the Torah, Kimu v'Kiblu, at the event of Purim story. We accepted the Torah twice. That means there's bookends. There's bookends. One bookend is Har Sinai. There's an arc, and it ends up with the Purim salvation. Kimu v'Kiblu hayudim. The Jewish people accepted Aleim v'Adar upon themselves with the kids, v'ala kol ha'nevam aleim and everyone else, v'lo yavor, and they never transgressed. They kept these mitzvot and did not transgress these mitzvot of Purim, of following, and every single, it wasn't just a one-off celebration a year later, it was every single year. They were remembered and done for every generation. This is a generational mitzvah for every family, wherever you are, in every city, mishpacha mishpacha, medina medina, ir ve'ir. Yemei Purim ha'ele lo yavru metoch Yehudim. They're never going to go away. Okay, we know we accepted it, and it's there every year. So why just tell me they're never going to go away? What's the answer to that question? Never means never. Why? Other mitzvot can disappear? Could other mitzvot disappear? Yeah. When? When Mashiach comes. When Mashiach comes, there may be a different relationship to certain mitzvot. But Purim is always going to be there. And Megillah Esther, says the Rambam, is always going to remain part of the Torah. The other prophets are not going to be needed when Mashiach comes because they're all about the arrival of Mashiach. But once the Mashiach arrives, we're done. We don't need them anymore. Not so Megillah. Something about Megillah Esther has a messianic complex encoded in it. And that's why Lo Yosef Zaram, it's always going to be there. And Esther, Bat Avachal, or Mordechai Yudi, et Kol, Tokef Lakemet, Ageret HaPurim Azot Hashinit, they sent it out, all these letters throughout, that these mitzvot need to be kept. And Achashverosh, chapter 10, is a very short chapter. V'yasam HaMelech Achashverosh, Masal La'aretz V'yam. He had new powers and new control, and he's accepting taxes from everyone. So he gets his wishes as well. Remember, it doesn't say, by the way, there's a very sneaky piece at the end. Right at the end, the last verse. Ki Mordechai Yehudi Mishneh Lamelech. He's very important, Achashverosh. V'godol Yehudim, he was the great Jew. V'ratzu, and knows l'rov echav. What is the rov? Most. What do you mean most? It's Mordechai. He should be loved and considered great by Kol Echav, by all the Jewish people. Who is Rov? Why is Mordechai suddenly being diminished over here? And he's loved and respected and wanted by most of his brothers. Who are the ones who weren't very happy with him? It's going to sound weird. This is going to sound very, very strange to you. Rov, the rabbis. Some of his colleagues, his echavas, or his colleagues, they weren't so happy with him.
Why?
Because he had to do what he had to do, but he had diminished himself in his learning by saving the Jewish people. And so he wasn't really, when it comes to his, it's hard to say exactly, but the rabbis were a little bit Yeah, he had to leave Torah, to leave the bed midrash, do what he had to do, but he had lost a little bit of standing among his fellow, like no good deed goes unturned, you know what I'm saying? He got involved in this, he had to do what he had to do, he saved the entire Jewish people. But even when you do some amazing stuff and save people, they're like, yeah, but you're not what you were before. Lahavdil, Elef Abdalat. Let me give you a mashal. It's like Winston Churchill, Lahavdil, during the Second World War. He was beloved, he was elected, he went to war against the Nazis, he was successful. And then afterwards, he stood for Prime Minister again, and he didn't get the job. Because there was his job during the event, and after the event, okay, it's not about you anymore. You lose a little bit of, they used to say it's like a wartime Prime Minister, and now they needed a peacetime Prime Minister. They made a change. That's the analogy I always like to give. You were needed for this mission, and now you're not so needed. You lost a little bit of, okay, fine. You did your job, but you're not where you used to be. I always say, if you're expecting gratitude for helping your people, and you're doing it because you want a good response, don't do it. Do it because it's the right thing. Just because you do the right thing doesn't mean everyone's going to respect you for it. Frightening thought, right? Anyway, still the right thing to do. V'doveh shalom l'chol zara, and peace came to everyone. That's what Rashi says. V'lo l'chol echav, not to all of his brothers. Melamed shepishu mimenu miksat Sanhedrin. Some of the great leaders of Sanhedrin kind of separated themselves. Lefi shenaseh karov l'melachot v'ayah batal metodov. He had to leave his studies in order to serve the Jewish people. He wasn't the great scholar. He lost some of his scholarship by not keeping up because he had to save the Jewish people, which is different. This whole story took years, not decades. So he lost some of it. Okay? Let us visit a couple of themes. Revisit that we started with. We've mentioned most of the ideas, but let's see them inside. Open your books, please, and turn to page 30. Okay. So here's some of the questions we looked at during our Megillah. The first question we wanted to figure out is, where is Esther in the Torah? Where is Esther in Torah? And we said there are times when Hashem hides himself from the world. He'elam. Olam is he'elam. And that is one of the reasons that Hashem's name is not mentioned in the Megillah, the only book in all of the Torah where Hashem's name is not mentioned. In all of Torah and all of scriptures. Okay. So there's two ways that we can access Hashem. Sometimes Hashem reveals himself explicitly through miracles, as we call Nes Nigla. And sometimes we have Nes Nistar, Nes Nigla, like Pesach, the great miracles, or Chanukah, right? The over natural, upturned miracles of Pesach, Chanukah. Nistar are times when a Kadosh Baruch Hu hides himself. Which one is greater? Well, they both have their advantages and disadvantages. Pesach is considered great because it's a great Kiddush Hashem. The plagues and the splitting of the sea and Matan Torah, these are all revealed miracles that make a tremendous Kiddush Hashem. Nistar, we don't like that so much because Hashem hides himself. He hides himself. But there is an advantage of Nistar over Nigla, which is, what's the advantage?
Emunah.
When it comes to Nes Nistar, there is a level of emunah. That is correct. There is a faith that is built by a person because they've got to dig a little bit deeper to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu, see God's hand guiding the events of their own lives in the natural world. Yeah? That's why, look at page 31, this is Rosh Shimshon Pinkus, he gives a beautiful idea. He says, even the name Purim seems like it's all coincidence. It's a lottery. We don't know how it's going to end up. Yep, everything just turns around. There's nothing more natural than drawing lots. So anyone can say that it's all chance. Actually, we're going to see when it comes to Amalek. Amalek, we mentioned already, are the kings of chance. That's why Haman chose that. Amalek was all about chance. Let's see that inside. Amalek is the numerical value of 70, 40, 30, 100. 240. That is the same numerical value as Safek, doubt. Amalek are the people who say it's all chance. There is no God. Everything is random. It's all a lottery. Right? There's no God. Forget about it. And that's the Amalek in this world. That's why Amalek are still there and why Mashiach's job is going to have to be to uproot Amalek, the people and the message. Right? The message of Amalek has to be removed from this world. It's going to have to be. Because Mashiach's job is to spread God's name, to cover the earth, says the prophet Isaiah, just like the waters cover the earth. It's going to be everywhere. So Amalek are all about seeding doubt, safek, sfeka, into this world. By the way, it's worth noting that the first time Amalek came to get us was in the desert after we left Egypt. And it says, Asher karcha b'derech. That's how the Torah describes it. They came to it. They found you along the way. Karcha. Karcha means they just happened upon you. Again, it's the same thing. We just happened to see the Jewish people and they happened to attack us. And all the events of Purim happened to happen. You know, happened to be that he overheard Bigdan and Teresh. Happens to be that he chose Esther. It's all coincidence. Karcha. Just like kara. Rashi says something fascinating. He says the word karcha actually means something. What's karcha? Kar. What's kar? You should know, because this room is kar. Cold. Amalek are the people who cool down the world. And Rashi gives a very famous analogy. And the analogy Rashi gives is that someone makes a bath that is full of hot water. And the first guy to go in gets burnt. And he knows he's going to get burnt. But he cools down the water, because one person goes in, they absorb some of the heat. So the next guy goes in, it's not so hot. Same thing. When the Jewish people left Egypt, we were on fire. We were hot. We just left Egypt, the miracles, the Makot. Amalek come to attack us. They got burnt. But then, other people thought, wow, well, if Amalek can attack them, we probably could attack them as well and not get so burnt. We could fight better. So Amalek now represents anti-Semitism in its most primal and destructive form. Killing Jews for the sake of killing Jews. Even if it makes no sense. That's Amalek. Many nations want to kill us. The Egyptians killed us. Yeah? Midian, many nations. But something about Amalek that's very, very specific. They kill us with no ulterior motive. Actually, it makes no sense. It made no sense for Haman. Haman had power and money. Had he just left Mordechai alone, everything would have been great. Had he not picked on the Jews, he would have done fantastic. It's like, that's why many people say the Nazis have the traits of Amalek. It's like a known thing. It's accepted. The Nazis, that's an Amalek thing. They're fighting wars on every front, and all they're doing is schlepping out to, create camps and put their money resource to killing a bunch of Jews. You got nothing better to do with your time than gather up these 6 million Jews and wipe them out? That's Amalek. Amalek are people who kill us for no better reason. There's no good. They want to take our money, just kill us for no reason, actually counterproductive. That's Amalek, yeah.
So does Amalek have like a cultural hatred towards Jews? Or is it instilled in each one of them?
It's seemingly instilled in them. Now, do they act upon it? Not necessarily. The Rambam says if they don't act upon it, then you leave them alone. But if they follow the traits of being Amalek and they don't overcome that desire, then we got a problem. Then you got to wipe them out.
Is that from God? God put that hatred?
Oh, where does it come from? Well, everything comes from Hashem ultimately, but it goes back to their ancestors, and it goes back to Esav, and that aspect of Esav that culminated in their creation. You have to really go back to their form. Actually, I see even more interesting. What does the word Amalek even mean? I mean, the whole story is about Amalek, right? It comes from something called Malika. The name itself. Well, do you know what Malika is? Malika is the Kohen would grow a nail, a thumbnail, long, and he would sharpen it. And they would sacrifice, part of the korbanot in the Beit HaMikdash was to sacrifice a bird through Malika. They would cut the neck of the bird and squeeze out its blood. And that was a certain korban that was brought in the Beit HaMikdash. It's called Malika. So Malika is a separation of head and body. And that's Amalek. Amalek represents the separation of the mind, the head, because they were very smart. They're not idiots, they're not savages. They act like savages, they're not. They're very smart. They cheated. Think of the Nazis, geniuses. But their bodies are different. That's why, how did Esav die, the father of Amalek? His head was cut off, and his head rolled into Mar Machpelah and was buried together, but his body was left outside. His brain was good. His body wasn't good. His actions were not good. Right? That's why Dan ben Hushim ben Dan actually cut his head off. Yeah? It's Malika. They're very smart, but they don't act that way at all. Oh, the cold is getting to me in this room, isn't it? God, it's terrible. I put an email out to fix it. Just so you can see this, I don't finish with this because it's too cold. So what started with Shaul and Agag, Melech Agag, carried on. This eternal battle between the Jewish people and Amalek continued up until this story and is still going and will not be resolved until Mashiach comes. Okay, I need to warm up. Stop over there.